Hello again, I'm Greg, and here we are at the River Road courtyard. We're not in the kitchen today, we're out in the sun. It's a nice 70-degree day in June, so we're going to enjoy the outside temps a little bit. And we have another round of what the heck do I do with this vegetable today. So there's some strange vegetables out there, and kohlrabi is another one of those veggies that a lot of people are not familiar with. Didn't grow up eating, including myself. I did, however, live in Germany for 3 years where I was introduced to it. The Germans love their kind of white, fleshy, hard vegetables that grow well in the northern latitudes. So I was introduced to it as a pickled vegetable, and that's one of my favorite things to do. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. But first, just the basics of kohlrabi. So it grows in the ground upright like this, has a few more leaves on it. We usually trim a few off to give out for CSA. The leaves can just be removed, and you can use them or you can discard them into the compost. A lot of people tell me they're using them early in the season. You can use them just like any other kind of kale. You know, I treat it like a hardy green and cook it for the most part, just because it does have a skin, but it's got a pretty thick skin. So even with a knife, you know, it doesn't come off that easily. So I like to use a knife and just cut it off. So the core goes in a little ways, so you want to cut a nice little chunk off of there for the core. And then, if you have a nice sharp knife, you're not going to lose hardly anything. And it's a much easier way, I think, than trying to use a peeler. A peeler on something that's rough and round can often result in scraping your knuckles, which I've done before. It doesn't feel very good. So I would choose the knife. You can see I have a nice sharp knife here. I'm not losing any of the flesh. And now we have our nice kohlrabi. So the kohlrabi, you know, I would always encourage, especially when you haven't tried something, I would always encourage you to just try a little bit raw, so that you have an idea of what you're working with to begin with. So raw, it's very crunchy. It's like a mild radish, or mixed with maybe a broccoli stem kind of texture, but it has a very delicious flavor right now. I mean, it's been a nice spring. We've had plenty of sun. We've got all the water we need. So these are basically full of crunchy water right now with a mild flavor to them. And so the other thing about when you have a mild flavored vegetable is that it means it's also going to accept flavor. And that's where things like pickling come in. But first I'll show you real quick just a couple of different ways you can cut it up. So if I were going to make it like in a stir fry, or like mix it with my eggs perhaps, I might just cut it into thin pieces like that. You know, and that way you still have some nice big crunch. But if you wanted to cut it smaller, you know, you can do a couple cross cuts, and then you can make them into little sticks like that. So lots of different ways you can cut it up. And for these kinds of cuttings, like I said, I would use those like if I'm pan frying it. The other good way to use it that I haven't really done too much of, but I can see how it would lend itself very well, is to take a chunk of it and grate it. So you can grate it into a salad where you'll still get that same kind of, you'll add some crunch to your salad, which a lot of people really enjoy. It's a different flavor for sure than you're going to get in most of your salads as far as combined in the spring with things like mustard greens and spinach and lettuce. Once you grate it, then it also makes a great slaw. So, you know, slaw is really just a different kind of salad with smaller chopped or grated vegetables. But it would lend itself very well to that too. You could grate some spring beets and carrots along with your kohlrabi. You could throw some other greens in there if you wanted to. Anything that you might have in your freezer, like corn would go really good in a slaw like that too, I think, if you had something like that in your freezer. But very, very versatile vegetable. Now, I like to quick pickle them. That's one of my favorite things to do, and right now I always have pickled onions on hand to eat, and I'm adding kohlrabi to my pickled onions. And you know, pickled onions is super basic. You know, I just use a 75 to 25 ratio of vinegar to water. I use just straight apple cider vinegar with a little bit of water, and basically sugar and salt to taste. And with quick pickling, you only have to wait about a day before you start eating it. It's better to wait 3 or 4 days. The longer you wait, the more flavor it'll have. But that is a really easy way to do it. In just a few minutes, you can chop up an onion into rings, throw a few of these in a jar, apple cider vinegar, a little bit of water, seal it up. You don't even have to heat it up if you don't want to, and just stick it in your refrigerator, and in a day or two, you've got a really tasty condiment featuring the kohlrabi. And then another thing with kohlrabi is, so with CSAs, you might be only getting 1 or 2 a week. And you might think, well, I don't want to pickle just one of these. I would like a bunch of them. In which case, I would save them for a few weeks. Because they have a protective skin, and like any vegetable with a protective skin, it's going to last a really long time. Okay, so you don't even have to put it in a bag if you don't want to. You can just put it in your drawer. I do keep them in bags usually. It helps to retain a little bit more of the moisture, as some will leach out. But I will keep a handful of these spring kohlrabis all the way until the end of August when I do my winter pickling, my longer term pickling project, because I found that kohlrabi is just one of the best vegetables you can pickle because it has inherent crunch. It accepts flavor really well, and so for those 2 reasons, it's the perfect pickler, because that's all you're doing when you're pickling. You're just, you're basically immersing something in a liquid that you find tasty, and hoping that it gets into the vegetable that you want to eat, and that it stays crunchy, right? So those are the real good qualities that lend itself to pickling. And let's see, so we can stir fry them, we can shred them up into salads, we can make coleslaw. They'll store for a really long time for you. You can eat them raw, you can pan fry them. You can also put them on planks, like you can do really skinny planks and put them on the grill, and that would be very tasty as well. I find them delicious on sandwiches because it adds crunch to a sandwich, and because it accepts flavor. You can, when you pan fry it, you can add all kinds of stuff to the pan and flavor it up to make it whatever you want to taste like. Anything else that we should mention?
I don't have any questions.
The one other thing I would mention is that, so we grow much larger ones, like really big ones, in the fall, and they keep during the winter time. And you can do that with these too, but a lot of times in the summer, people aren't into roasting. But roasting these things is amazing. Like with anything, it concentrates the flavor, it removes some of the water, and I have found that this is one of the best roasted vegetables around. And when I have it in a dish, people are like, what is that little white thing in there? It's just all shriveled up now, but it's just really, really tasty. Because they do have an inherent sweetness, more than, a lot of times people talk about sweet. So it has a flavor that has a sweetness, kind of tied into it, like a carrot does, or a beet, and so forth. So roasting is another really, really good way to use your kohlrabis. You can save them up and do that. You can roast them on the grill outside during the summer. Come by our sale in the fall, and you can buy a bowling ball size one and eat it all winter long. So,
how long did you eat your winter one?
My winter kohlrabi lasted until March, and all I did was cut wedges out of it. I would cut like I'm cutting like a pizza or something.
Yeah.
I would cut these little triangular wedges out of it, and then where you cut into the flesh, it heals over, and it just becomes another part of the skin. Basically, it heals over just like a wound, would heal over. And then you could just keep cutting off of it. I was impressed. I had a 22-pound kohlrabi going into winter. And wedge by wedge, we went through it, probably about 6 or 8 wedges, mostly in roasted vegetables. Roasted veggie mixes, a few soups probably here and there too. So,
and how long will those guys last in the fridge?
these guys will last months. As I said, I keep them into August, and they do fine. No problem, because they have a skin on them. So anything with a skin and you keep it in the refrigerator in cold temperatures, it basically becomes a storage vegetable. So they keep for a long time. Very versatile.
Thank you, Greg. That's awesome.
Thanks.